When a film starts with a title sequence over a burlap mat, you'll probably have the impression that the film that you're about to watch isn't going to be very exciting. Which it won't be. But it will be deeply beautiful, because what you're about to watch is a Yasujiro Ozu film. Today I'm going to be discussing the life, the work, the influence of the great Japanese film director Yasujiro Ozu, whom is considered by many, including myself, to be one of the greatest film directors of all time. Roger Ebert once said, "Sooner or later, everyone who loves movies comes to Ozu. He is the quietest and gentlest of directors, the most humanistic, the most serene. But the emotions that flow through all his films are strong and deep, because they reflect the things we care about the most: parents and children, marriage, or a life lived alone, illness and death, and taking care of one another." He was born in Tokyo on December 12, 1903, and brought up in a middle-class family. He decided he wanted to be a filmmaker after seeing the film Civilization when he was 13. He was quite the avid cinephile in his youth, and by the age of 19, Ozu decided not to go to university, but instead, he became an assistant cameraman for Sochiku Studios. He directed his first film in 1927 when he was 24, and made a steady stream of movies throughout the 30s. His early pre-war films were mostly student comedies and gangster films, many of which are now lost. Ozu was reluctant to make a talkie until he finally broke in 1936, with his film The Only Son. And though thematically these early films are a bit different than the narratives that would become synonymous with Ozu, we begin to see his style developing and being refined. His cinematic language was a strict code for Ozu, and it's this commitment to it that made his film so unique, that within 10 seconds, you'll probably be able to recognize that you're watching an Ozu film. Well, what makes an Ozu film so distinctly an Ozu film? Let's begin with his tatami shot. Ozu kept his camera low to the ground, approximately where someone's eye level would be, if they were sitting on a tatami mat, and it helped capture the room from floor to ceiling. His camera almost always remained static. He only ever used 55mm lens, and even when basically every movie in Japan was being shot in CinemaScope, he refused to change from his classic aspect ratio of 1:33 to 1. Ozu paid great detail to the composition of his films. The continuity of a scene could often be sacrificed so that Ozu could get the shot that he wanted. People and objects were staged in such a way that the deep focused lens that he always used brought out a real depth to the scene. The well-composed symmetry is always noticeable, and often characters are framed within frames. Some other things to note is that Ozu also breaks the intersecting eye line rule. His characters often speak to each other without making eye contact. Characters are often shot at a medium close-up and speak directly to the camera. Everything is so considered that any frame would make a beautiful picture. He also frequently collaborated with many of the same people throughout his entire career, Setsuko Hara and Chizuru, for example. He also collaborated on 27 screenplays with Koga Noda. Both Ozu and Noda were heavy drinkers and would judge the progress on their screenplays by the amount of empty sake bottles. The themes of his major works seem simple enough. Typically, they revolve around the family home and depict the strained relationships in them, either between children and parents or husband and wife, from conflicts that arise from Japan moving towards modernity to generational gaps. Not much will happen in an Ozu film. A daughter will get married, a wife will realize she's treating her husband poorly, parents will visit their busy adult children. It often seems that Ozu's cinematography will reveal more to us than the story will. We follow our characters as they quietly experience internal struggle, until ultimately they reach a calm acceptance of their fate.
いやね、世の中って。そう、嫌なことばっかり。 同じ私。
But Ozu isn't without humor.
あんた読んだ？
いいよ。
And certainly, a movie full of fart jokes isn't beneath him.
何？
Ozu received criticism stating his films are all too similar, to which he said, I have always said that I only make tofu because I am a tofu maker. One person cannot make so many different kinds of films. It is possible to eat many different types from around the world at a restaurant and a Japanese department store. But as a result of this overly abundant selection, the quality of the food and its taste suffer. Filmmaking is the same way. Even if my films appear to all be the same, I am trying to express something new, and I have a new interest in each film. I am like a painter who keeps painting the same rose over and over again. Ozu also never uses dissolves, preferring the straight cut. He often begins a shot before a character enters a room and lets it linger once they leave, which brings us to his signature trademark, the pillow shot. Between events in the movie, Ozu will inject a few shots, almost as if to punctuate between these scenes. They often serve no benefit to the narrative, but they give us a moment to pause and reflect before we move on. Sometimes they are seen from outside, sometimes they focus on an object in the house like a teapot, sometimes it's just an empty room. There is a sense of serenity in their nothingness. Ozu said, rather than tell a superficial story, I wanted to go deeper and show the hidden undercurrents, the ever-changing uncertainties of life. So instead of constantly pushing dramatic action to the fore, I left empty spaces so the viewers could have a pleasant aftertaste to savor. His most discussed pillow shot is from the movie Late Spring, and it serves a different kind of purpose than his usual pillow shots. Let's watch. We do not witness the shift in emotion. Instead, we only see a vase. And everything has changed. Ozu was generally unknown in the West during his lifetime until Donald Ritchie, an American writer and Japanese film expert who had been living in Japan for a few decades, had insisted that he bring Ozu's work to the 1962 Venice Film Festival. Sojiku Studios were unsure whether Ozu could appeal to an outside audience, believing him to be too Japanese to be appreciated by Westerners. But Ritchie brought them anyway, and they made a massive impact, and Ozu's genius was finally recognized outside Japan. Though Ozu's work do celebrate the uniqueness of Japanese culture, the themes in his film are deep and universal, and the characters are profoundly human. His impact on cinema has been ginormous, inspiring many filmmakers from Abbas Kiarostami to Claire Denis, Wim Wenders, Aki Kaurismäki, Jim Jarmusch, to Hirokazu Koreeda, Hou Hsiao-hsien, and many more. His masterpiece, Tokyo Story, has even been remade, modeling after a new, modern Japanese family.
Amerikkalaisen elokuvan vaikutuspiirissä eniten minussa herättää kunnioitusta se, että Ozu ei koskaan ole tarvinnut yhtäkään murhaa, väkivallan tekoa tai laukausta kertoakseen kaiken oleellisen ihmiselämästä.
A year after Ozu's films were introduced to the West, on his 60th birthday in 1963, Yashishiro Ozu died. He is buried at Kamakura, and many do a sort of pilgrimage to pay their respects to the master and leave him some sake. His name is not on his grave, just a Chinese character Mu, which stands for nothingness. To quote Donald Ritchie, "What remains after an Ozu film is the feeling that, if only for an hour or two, one has seen the goodness and the beauty of everyday things and everyday people. You've had experiences you cannot describe, because only film, not words, can describe them. You have seen a few small, unforgettable actions, beautiful because real. You are left with a feeling of sadness too. It is not because the films are honest about life, and about death as well. It is because these people, these moments, are gone.